So we're live. So welcome everybody. Belated Happy New Year. This is the Esports Cities panel, part 2 live, which is just awesome. And the band's back together, minus one person. So just to reintroduce everybody and get started, joining us today, Kyle Schultz, Executive Vice President of Business Development and Global Strategy at World Business Chicago. Has been a busy guy this year. Dustin Sweeney, Design Director with Branded Environments and Digital and Virtual Technologies. Sounds like a really fun job at HKS. Always good to talk about what's going on in the real world space.
Yeah, right.
Right. And then Anthony Dodd, Emmy Award-winning Chairman of the Regulated Esports and Video Games Committee, Chairman of the American Heart Association Gaming Efforts, CEO of Godhammer Gaming Group, and most recently a new board member of the Esports Trade Association. So great to have you all. And Leslie Fitzsimmons, I am the head of marketing for FitGamer. Check out our app, small plug, fitgamer.gg, FITGMR. And also a board member of the Esports Trade Association and chairman of the marketing committee. So welcome. Great to have you all. And if there is a comment stream running, so if you have questions for these guys, we'll be trying to focus on those and make sure we get those answered for you. But we have to start with the Microsoft acquisition Blizzard for $68, almost $70 billion. Please, what thoughts? Come on.
You have to wonder what Ubisoft and Electronic Arts are doing right now. I mean, when they saw that, they're probably saying, a new office would be nice. I mean, that's an incredible. I mean, to me, a lot of people had asked me this morning what I thought of the news, and my instant reaction was thinking about those games are going to be available on Game Pass as soon as they could be. I mean, Overwatch and Call of Duty. Microsoft's strategy for Game Pass has been stunning. It's a cascade of high quality games that never seem to stop coming. And now they're going to add Blizzard Activision titles to it. And if you look through the Blizzard Activision, like just the list of games that's beyond the big ones, it's amazing. And it's something that I believe, and see what you guys think, Sony has to respond to in a way, right? Because if Call of Duty becomes an Xbox exclusive, there are a lot of people on PlayStation users that are going to be very, very unhappy. I know quite a bit of them because that's a very important title for the PlayStation.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see how they respond and how some of the other kind of names respond to the market. One of the comments I read in the many posts that hit my LinkedIn feed this morning about this was, if it wasn't obvious before, but the big boys have come to the table, right? There's just that reaffirmation that this is real and there's a major economy behind it. I mean, people on this broadcast probably really knew that from the get-go, but to have Microsoft put their stamp on it is, I think it's time that it's going to be recognized the way I think we all have been seeing it.
For sure. Kyle.
To Dustin's point, to everyone that's participating in this stream this morning, you've all been here. I've understood the economic consequences and where this is going. But one of the trends that was fun to experience during the holidays was the amount of coverage that the video game esports industry received from major outlets that I listened to on podcasts, whether it was the Wall Street Journal or NPR's kind of economics and business podcast, like multiple stories across multiple days and different factors within that. And I think it just echoes Dustin's points. The big boys have now recognized a serious business opportunity and that this isn't just a fad for people in basements anymore, but it's a serious business that it allows you to attract and keep consumers engaged with your content platforms, which is we're all at the disposal of the content generators.
Yeah, it's the top story in the New York Times. Actually, they have two stories on it. Ironically, it's not even on CNN, but it is the top story in New York Times, and this is the biggest content deal, I think. I don't know if there's a bigger video game content deal that's ever been done. Or I'm actually trying to think to media, if there's a bigger media
$70 billion, that's a tough number to, or $68 billion, that's a tough number to exceed.
Yeah. In cash.
So,
yeah.
in cash. Yeah, we just write checks like that every day.
Sure.
So in thinking about, what we're here to talk about today and the cities that are still kind of evaluating this space, do you think this sends a big enough message to get their attention to make the investment? Or is that still?
I was trying to think if there is another company out there other than Microsoft that could make this even more of a validating statement. If another player like Microsoft is like, it's not some ramshack company, it's not some app that who knows if it'll be around it's an integrated part of our life. I mean, it's how I function as a professional. So for them to make this bet on like the internet evolution, gaming, I think it sends a serious message to policymakers, business development, and economic development professionals that this is a serious sector with serious economic consequences that you should take notice to.
Which is fantastic news.
Yeah.
I mean, it took a while for Congress to understand social media. I'm not sure they still understand it, but social media, the impact social media is having on elections and just fake news and all the topics associated with just the distribution of information. I think that, in the 90s, there was a lot of news about video games and culture and whether they were causing violence or whether they're, changing the way that kids were able to concentrate. And I think we're past that, right? This is a big industry. And I think who understands, I mean, when we started the esports business, trying to, here in Atlantic City and getting people to kind of sign on to wanting to do events here sponsored by the city and to entice, travel and tourism, a lot of the questions are, well, aren't we just talking kids? And I think recent news, Roblox, that's another big deal, right? A lot of these companies now, the big media companies are not anymore the Time Warners. They're becoming the video game companies that are now owning the mind share of all the millennials and Generation Z and a good share of my generation, right? Of Generation X. This is the way that people entertain themselves. And when Netflix is the second option after video games, if they haven't been taken seriously yet, I don't know what else needs to be done. I mean, the fact that this news is earth-shattering and will probably be responded to in some capacity by Sony, just extends that conversation into the mainstream. But it's good so one thing I will say is what it does do for cities looking to get into, like if you're going to have a Call of Duty championship or tournament, it does get away from all the issues that Activision was having related to the CEO and the treatment of workers and the treatment of women. Microsoft, having worked for them myself, Microsoft is a totally different organization that will nip those things in the bud day one. Those issues will not exist anymore at Activision Blizzard.
I will say from the kind of built world environment, it definitely brings a little bit more weight behind it. But I will say, just from my experience, working with, I would say, some of the smaller municipalities, the kind of outlying suburbs and towns of, say, like Dallas, Chicago, those are very responsive and are very on point with hosting gaming tournaments for their local communities and understanding the value that including that sort of space in some of their built environments, say community centers and things like that. Conversation comes over and over again in all of our kind of education projects as well as our kind of civil projects as well. So I will say, it's there, I would say, in the kind of municipal level. It'll be interesting to see if that kind of the idea mentality graduates to kind of the big metroplexes and with that kind of support from someone like Microsoft.
Nathaniel, who just posted a comment, was wondering if this will get an FCC response.
I was just going to say that.
It's something. Steve's over here. Like, I think that you're starting to look at, whether this is a monopoly or not, but it's nowhere close to that yet, right? So the fact that I think what they would look at is people who bought a PlayStation. I mean, in general, look, are they being disenfranchised in some capacity because what they expected to be on here is now removed from that ecosystem? And I don't think the video game space is if Facebook hasn't been hit with that I don't think Microsoft will be hit with that yet. There's still some major studios out there, and there's always Nintendo, right? So I don't think that it's a valid concern yet. But if tomorrow you find out that Microsoft acquired Electronic Arts, it's a different conversation. And by the way, they are right across the street from each other in Vancouver.
Right,
so
right. Only time will tell, and apparently not much time.
to do company events that right across the street.
So we were all together just 5 months ago, and in that period of time, so much has happened in the space, and I would just love your feedback on how this affects the efforts to bring esports to cities and what cities should be thinking about. On the lighter end, the intersection of fashion and major brands connecting in esports, and not from the I'm Louis Vuitton and I'm going to create a custom skin in League of Legends, but from the FaZe deal and other apparel deals like that.
Have you seen my NFT Pac-Man shirt? No.
Yes. No comment. And the Belong gaming footprint increasing in the country, obviously slowed down a little bit because of COVID, but those centers are really wonderful and bringing lots of life for esports in their communities. To the deals like NV Gaming just announced with taking over the operating rights for the Arlington Esports Stadium. And then lastly, and probably maybe the biggest, the continued growth of esports betting on a number of levels, more state adoptions, the advent of live, all kinds of things coming onto the horizon. So as you look at this, and this is just, and we're not even talking about NFTs, crypto, blockchain, play to earn. All of these things that have just been, it's like boom, 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 boom in just the last few months. What's on your radar for what is most impactful in where you are working with cities, and what do we need to be thinking about as an industry or as a city like a Chicago?
I'll turn it over to Anthony and Dustin to really provide the structure there. But Leslie, the part that you said that really goes back to my comment over the holidays is the costumes, the dress, the wearables for your avatar. One of the first times I heard one of those stories, I had my ear pods in, was doing the morning dishes, trying to figure out why my schizophrenic cat was upset. And I heard a study from Deloitte that just the dressing and the fashion for avatars in the gaming world was a multi-billion, $50 billion industry in 2022. I grabbed my phone out of my pocket and rewound it a minute so I could hear the context and lead up to that stat. So I think I share that story within the context of you have major fashion houses, major apparel industry investing into the gaming industry as another form of validation that this is no longer, the kids as a millennial, it's a kid. Well, I'm an adult now. And so it's a serious industry that deserves kind of that credibility. And Anthony, Dustin, if you guys want to answer the rest of Leslie's questions, and I can kind of back end with the city perspective.
Sure thing. From my side, being design director, brand environment, stuff like that, it's something that we come leading with when we start those conversations with these teams, and your brand is more than just what the logo and the color is. It is the lifestyles, everything that is included. So to see fashion, come and parlay with that is everything that we've been, preaching from the beginning. And I say I remember 2 years ago, maybe more, when 100 Thieves launched their Cash App compound, and a big major part of it was a retail front and fashion, and it was their streetwear brand. And not to say they were the first, but there were other brands doing it as well. But that was the first one to me that said, look, we're dedicating square footage to our customers and our fan base to come and interact with our brand at a tactile type waypoint. So those sorts of statements that we've been working with for even all the way to kind of traditional sports and things like that. Your brand is so much more than just what you see on TV or what you see in a logo. And then the kind of one of Leslie's other questions about Esports Arlington and Envy. That's just, I think, awesome. An awesome pivot for Team Envy. Somebody HKS has been working with for many, many years, and had to hold on to that one. But it's pretty great to see that they're making, I think, a very smart pivot in the industry to be able to have this home base, but also to use it as a kind of platform for them to communicate their larger brand, right? It's the many touch points that are a part of that designed, economy for who they are. So there's a lot of fluctuating points throughout even just the past 5 months, but those two kind of stood out to me in the most recent. Just seeing how brands can flex their muscle and attach to as many kind of tactical points for their audience. I think it was impressive.
Do you see from where you are, Dustin, as you talk to folks and Kyle too, really, but do you think that this is an opportunity, what Envy did, that is this a repeatable model in other cities for, particularly city-based franchises or other esports organizations in North America, really, to do this? And it's kind of a mutually beneficial partnership?
Yeah, I mean, of course, it depends on each scenario, right? On the team and what them as a kind of larger brand or larger company is able to handle internally. But I think it makes a ton of sense, no matter what scale you're operating, to partner with some sort of venue, to have that kind of in-person touch point that your fan base can constantly go to. This goes on to the Beyond Gaming locations, right? They're coming up with partnerships with their local fan bases as well, or if there's a local team, they've dedicated at least one location in that market to be the kind of home base fan base for that. So it totally makes sense, and it just creates a little home base for that fan base that's in that market. So it makes the most sense.
I think it's interesting if you take a look at what's going on at a meta level, right? Not a Facebook level, but a meta level. You're talking about there's the invisible elephant in the room is the fact that the gaming companies haven't yet created licensing models to be able to have relationships with cities, right? So cities and event organizers and collegiate organizers and scholastic organizers, they don't really have open permission to try to make money off of these games, right? Because they have community guidelines and they have all these other inhibitions because the relationships aren't there yet, even though honestly they should be. When I talk about a lot that I used to work in Korea, and Nexon is a company that has some of the best community relationships with players that there is. It's a very symbiotic relationship. But right now we don't have that here in the United States, and I don't see that path happening yet. So what you see is, which is really unique, organizations that play esports are the key licensee drivers, right? So it's not the games, it's people who play the games, because those are free and clear of the licensing rights that you have to deal with. And that makes it difficult for smaller cities to bring these esports organizations, these events, unless they tie to these larger teams, right? Because they don't have anything to tie themselves onto. And it's a unique model. I don't think I've ever seen anything like it before. And it's something that probably will take a little bit of time for us to understand. It's really the first time I really thought about it that way. Something Dustin said kind of cued me off, but we're not seeing esports organizations, fight off what is essentially free promotions. Like that's what you want. That's how you drive business. And I'd love to see the publishers get into that as well. And I know Microsoft's a lot better at it, by the way, than most other people. So that's a good move on the esports side. What happened this morning?
I think Anthony, just looking at the comments to the point you made about connecting, promoting, like Pugsy makes a comment that this attracts a worldwide audience. Part of my job, my mission statement as an organization is to promote Chicago as a leading global city. So the more that I can tie into broader audience and help them see why Chicago is special, that's me fulfilling my mission. And one of the things we think about as Chicago that helps us stand out is, and I hear this every time we have a visitor come to the city that's never been there before, is just how special our architecture, our skyline, our venues are. And to kind of pivot this into the sports world, like We have the iconic Wrigley Field. We have Soldier Field as just two of those landmarks. The more that esports can attach themselves with a venue that gives this local citizens a sense of, oh, this isn't just in a basement, but this is an economic driver that I can go in a destination that also then has a multiplier effect of they can broadcast from my neighborhood of Chicago on the Northwest side. And that helps do a number of things. So Pugsy, I think it does have a positive impact for cities when you have these groups and teams working even if it's a small venue, in a city and being able to say they're from Chicago, Illinois. Like, that's just a positive thing that reinforces how cutting edge of Chicago is there in an industry that's going to be something that dominates our conversation in 5 years, as Anthony was saying before we jumped live.
Well, you're talking about like the soccer pyramid, right? The football pyramid in the UK, right? It's really about every community, every town has their own organization, their own stadium, and some are much larger than others, but they're all the same. And some can graduate up, and smaller teams can play in the big leagues. It's a very different thing. It's oriented more around the town and the spirit of the town and our players. And I do think we will get there, but right now there is a convergence of conflicts, right? I don't know. I just made that up. Where we have to get over this hump that the game publishers have to work with the community in order for us to move forward.
How long before that happens? And what can cities do in the interim?
Well, you were talking about esports wagering. We're developing events for Atlantic City and other locations, and they are team-based, right? That is the draw, influencer-based. We are taking that same kind of tact because that is this. Would we want to do an open tournament for such and such game? Yeah, but I don't think we're there yet with the security that a company needs in order to spend money to design an event is just larger than most people understand, right? And it takes a long time, and you go to the safest route to accomplish the goals that you have, and the safest route now is to work with the teams and influencers to create events that draw interest. Over time, we hope that. Go on.
Just about to add on to that. Yeah, no, you hit it right on the head. Is that I think the biggest thing for the short term is that those big brands, the publishers, just back each of those teams and each of those smaller organizations as much as they can to help kind of lift that ability to host those events, to get more foot traffic into either venues or to those events, to understand the different titles. And at some point it will grow to a point where cities can attract, I think, those larger publishers to be able to host on their own. But right now, I think it's keeping it kind of localized and grassroots, like we've seen in the comments here to the right. It's keeping it to the individual, markets and economies, and let them kind of build at that level. And I think it'll be one of those things that kind of meets in the middle. We have big things like BlizzCon and things like that, and DreamHack and all those, which are kind of larger events. And then at the other opposite end, we have local events that are happening just at the kind of municipality type level. And I think they will eventually work towards the middle, and it'll be, supported much more widely.
Yeah, I agree.
What about the, looking again at cities and other things that are happening? There are a lot of things happening at the league level and in collegiate that look like they have the potential to really support growth of esports beyond the campus and into cities. What's your take on that?
Well, I mean, we're working on a couple of initiatives, and it's actually not just us. It's a large portion of the collegiate space is working on something. And I think that's something, if we get it accomplished, is going to be, there's a national infrastructure here for everyone to cooperate and sort of have a place where they belong, and every competitor, every organizer has value. I think, we were just at the Garden State Esports Finals, I think about a month ago. Leslie, you were there, and I was there. My son was there broadcasting for the first time. So proud. What was interesting about it was, Chris wants that event to move around to different places throughout the state, and then work with, New Jersey versus Pennsylvania. And the enthusiasm for that, even at this early stage, is huge. right now, what we need to do is and again, we go back to that discussion, work with the publishers to figure out where there's a revenue model here, because there should be plenty to go around, because the leagues do provide exactly what the publishers are looking for, which is support long term, right? I'm always fascinated by companies that fight community organizers who are trying to gestate support for somebody else's game. It makes no sense to me, right? It makes no sense to me, and I think we need to start saying that out loud, because it doesn't, holding all these things back. And I know so many people that I wish I could say this. Well, just say it. It doesn't matter anymore. If you can't move forward, if everyone's afraid to say something that is, they feel will have some negative repercussion, like lately, and, as we're working with others to try to navigate the scholastic esports space, there's a company that's sending cease and desist letters to everybody. This is our space. It's like, this space isn't owned by anyone. You can't own the space. The space is for the kids. People forget that, right? And yeah, you want organizers to make money, but you want good organizers to provide a good product and reflect, the morals and the sort of standards that we expect of any traditional sport, so that long term people can be proud to be part of this organization or part of an esports organization, represent their schools and their cities. And I think that the time for us to just individualize and talk, is in conflict, and I want to be better than them, is over. Either we unite and fix this space, or we're going to see fragmentation that doesn't help anybody. And I am a little worried.
Engaging the collegiate, scholastic level gamer is important. Like, I don't think anybody that's participating in this session needs to be quoted another article about the distributed workforce, how the pandemic has laid waste to traditional structures of workforce. And so for cities, the number one, doesn't matter if it's a local Chicago company that's in financial services and wants to expand, if it's a manufacturer or somebody from New Zealand or New York trying to come to Chicago, all that we always start with is workforce. It's not incentives. It's not cutting through bureaucracy. It's talent. Can I get the people there? And so it makes really strategic sense for cities to engage with every population of young people in their community to keep them. If it's another way to anchor them to want to stay in Chicago, that's a good thing for my overall economy, not just limited to the growth of esports, but across every other sector that Chicago cares about and wants to see prosper and create economic equality.
Well said. I think you're exactly right. It will be interesting to see who takes on the burden of the responsibility of bringing it together first, to bring that all to fruition, and recognizing that, and for companies to understand that, everything that's been said about what is happening in this space with the kids has future impact beyond anything that we've touched on. So we are almost out of time, which is crazy. Half an hour goes by super fast. But final thoughts on, leave us with a nugget about what's on the horizon for cities and esports, take this with you when you leave and do this. And what do you think? And while you're thinking, let me just let you know that don't forget, we've got our EsportsNext 2022 conference for members, August 22nd through 24th, to be even bigger and better than the last one, because hopefully everybody will be able to come. Mm-hmm. No COVID.
I think where I'll leave it, Leslie, is just the re-emphasizing the 2 points I made previously. There is a need for organizations to work together, and there is a need for esports publishers and video game publishers to take those organizations seriously and extend the olive branch so that they could all work in partnership to create a larger support system for esports. We can't really create jobs for esports when these companies can't make money, or we can't make jobs when companies are being hit with cease and desists for what I believe are dubious claims, right? You have to stabilize the entire structure. And to do that, there needs to be a sort of a coming together with an organized effort to reach out to publishers, not 25 people doing this and 35 doing that. It's organized structure, organized discussions, and I think we'll start to move forward. And hopefully, now that we're all coming out of our caves, we'll be able to start putting that infrastructure together over the next couple of years.
Yeah, I definitely support that, Anthony. But I think on a more kind of personal note, from the venue design side, I'm just always excited about just how we're going to, with the hype that is metaverse and that all that talk, but how we start to blend these virtual worlds and these physical worlds, and how do they start to build these kind of really immersive environments for both esports, but also just experiences in general, I think is going to be absolutely fascinating in the next, 5-10 years. With these projects coming online that do start to really break those barriers down, and you don't need goggles, you don't need glasses. It's all a part about the environment. So that's, from coming from the built world, that's what I'm most excited to see, is how this industry is kind of going to shift in the next 5-10 years.
Just to add to Dustin's, within that next 5 to 10 years, where I think that's when you'll start to see cities become is competitive for esports opportunities, whether that's just a weekend long competition, whether that's teams, the whole kind of stream of esports, in a way that they now treat a pharmaceutical company. I was with our deputy mayor 2 weeks ago, and he was bringing up the investments that Chicago has made into the esports economy and how that is a big opportunity that we are starting to get more and more behind. And this is not, this is a person who's a policymaker that is trying to influence Chicago's growth. And so if it's coming out of his mouth and he's starting to recognize the key areas that Chicago is standing on with esports, I think over those next 5 to 10 years, as Dustin said, the transition will be across municipalities and across layers of government, as this becomes not just a promotional item or a tourism item, but real economic impact for everyone that it touches.
Great. Well said. And thank you all for participating. I wish we could go on, but we are over time.
We're not talking about NFTs? I thought we were. Oh.
I know. You know what? Like, that's like 2 panels put together.
Yeah.
But thank you, everyone, for your comments. I hope we answered them. For anybody looking for more information about research, please go to the Esports Trade Association's website. We have a wonderful relationship with YouGov and some other partners in the research space. There's a lot there. Have a great rest of your week. And thanks again for watching. And thank you,
Thanks
guys.
for hosting, Leslie.
Thanks all.
Bye.
Long.